Apple is one of the largest companies in the world. Today's video, narrated by Zach, is on 5 facts about Apple you may not have known.
Number 5. First company to reach $1 trillion. In 2018, Apple became the first publicly listed US company to reach a value of $1 trillion. That's 1 with 12 zeros, by the way. Since then, it has dropped to around $870 billion, which still makes it one of the most valuable companies in the world. All the way back in 2011, it had more cash in the bank than even the US Treasury. The company's yearly revenue is greater than the economic output of many countries, and even the combined net worth of the 10 richest people in the world doesn't surpass its value. Even though the CEO, Tim Cook, commented that it's not the most important measure of the company's success, such an enormously high value was an indisputably impressive feat, especially given the fact that Apple was the first to achieve it in the US and the second to achieve it in the entire world. China's oil giant, PetroChina, was the only one to have done it previously in 2007, but its shares quickly dropped, and today they're down to $180 billion. Number 4. Steve Jobs earns $1 a year. Steve Jobs left Apple for 12 years in 1985 because of power struggles with the company's board of directors and its then CEO. When he returned in 1997, the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. His decision to make a $1 salary was both practical in its frugality and showed his dedication to getting the company back on track. The fact that he owned many Apple shares ensured that he'd get paid, but only if the company succeeded once again. As the Apple stock price eventually rose, so did his profit from the 5.5 million shares that he owned. Their value went up from about $3 in 1997 to $365 in 2011 when Jobs retired. The $1 salary policy has also been followed by other famous CEOs, like Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, Oracle's Larry Ellison, and until recently, Hewlett-Packard's Meg Whitman. Number 3. The story behind the logo. The original Apple logo consisted of a scene with Sir Isaac Newton under an apple tree, with the apple about to fall on his head, but it was replaced after less than a year with the now famous, simple design that was far more practical and easier to print on smaller surfaces. As Apple became more and more successful, an increasing amount of elaborate stories appeared about the logo's meaning. The bite in the apple was widely speculated to refer to Alan Turing, the famous founder of computing. His body was found with a half-eaten apple beside it after he committed suicide by consuming cyanide. But the real story is much simpler. Steve Jobs was on a fruitarian diet and working on an apple farm when he got the idea. He was inspired to name the company and consequently design its logo based on the fruit because he found it fun, spirited, and not intimidating. As for the bitten part, according to the company, it was added merely to prevent the logo from being confused with a cherry. It might have also been inspired by the company's first slogan, "Bite into an apple." Number 2. They almost went bankrupt. During the 12-year period after Steve Jobs left the company, Apple nearly went bankrupt because of shrinking Mac sales and losing market share to the lower-priced duopoly of Microsoft Windows on Intel PC clones. They made a bunch of new products, from digital cameras to game consoles, and even clothes, but to no avail. So, they decided to bring Steve Jobs back in 1997, who played a crucial role in reviving the company. At this point, prominent CEOs like Dell's Michael Dell commented that they would just shut the company down and give the money back to the shareholders if they were in Jobs' shoes. The situation was so bad that they had Microsoft, their top competitor, investing $150 million in the company. If this hadn't happened, the world might have never seen iPods, iPhones, iPads, or iMacs. When Jobs delivered the news about the Microsoft partnership at his first Macworld keynote, all he could say to the boos from the audience was, "We need all the help we can get." He also pointed out that the rivalry with Microsoft should be forgotten and that the only way to move forward was to focus on doing high-quality work instead of focusing on competition. By 1998, Jobs managed to refocus the company on the Mac, and this, combined with Microsoft's help, put the company back on track and enabled it to start making profits again and invest them into development of the insanely popular products to come. Number 1. It had 3 founders originally. Not many know that Apple was started by a trio: Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. Wayne met Jobs and Wozniak while he was working on building the internal corporate documentation systems at Atari. He invited the two to his home to advise them and help them resolve one of their intense discussions on the future of computer design and the entire industry. It was then that Jobs proposed the founding of a company by him and Wozniak, but with Wayne as a sort of intermediary. So Jobs and Wozniak got 45% of the stake each, and Wayne 10% of the responsibility of acting as a tiebreaker in their decision-making process. And so, Apple was founded in 1976, and Wayne was the one who illustrated their first logo and wrote their first manual. But Wayne was also quite risk-averse from the very beginning because of his failed slot machine business situation 5 years prior. He has also said that he couldn't keep up with Jobs and Wozniak, and was more invested in original product engineering and slot machines than working with documentation systems indefinitely, like it was probably expected of him in Apple. And so, Wayne decided to sell his 10% stake for $800 just 12 days after the company was founded. He got an additional payout of $1,500, and that was the end of his involvement with Apple, despite Steve Jobs' attempt to persuade him to come back to the company. His $800 share would have now been worth tens of billions of dollars. Despite all of this, Wayne has said that he has never regretted his decision, stating that it was the best decision he could have made based on the information that was available to him at the time. As for Apple becoming one of the most valuable companies in the world, he has commented that he was getting too old, with too much to risk, unlike his young partners. And with the stress that would have involved staying with Apple since its founding, he would have, in his own words, probably wound up the richest man in the cemetery. What he did end up regretting, though, was selling the original Apple partnership contract paper in the early 90s for $500. In 2011, this contract was sold at an auction for as much as $1.6 million. Honorable mentions. Its rivals are its suppliers. Samsung is considered to be Apple's biggest rival in the mobile scene, but the company is also one of its biggest suppliers, along with LG, another South Korean tech company. iPhone X's OLED panels are primarily supplied by Samsung, while LG supplies the panels for its Plus variant. Samsung also provides Apple with many other components, like flash memory for storing data content, mobile DRAMs used for multitasking various applications and devices, and application processors which control and keep the whole device running. These kinds of arrangements are mutually beneficial, since outsourcing supply chain and assembly operations allows companies like Apple to concentrate on designing and developing new products, while companies like Samsung reduce manufacturing costs for their own mobile phone components by being able to increase bulk production because of these large orders. The smoking ban. There have been many reports about Apple stores refusing to service devices with warranties because of the devices being exposed to smoke. The smoke supposedly builds up as tar in the device if there's anyone smoking near it, and Apple employees shouldn't then be exposed themselves to secondhand smoke via the contaminated device, which is seen as a biohazard. In 2009, the issue got all the way to Steve Jobs' office, and an explanation was offered that stated, "Nicotine is on OSHA's list of hazardous substances, and Apple would not require an employee to repair anything deemed hazardous to their health." The only problem is that there is no clear statement on this issue in Apple's warranty clause. But either way, just stay away from smoking, if not for your device, then for your own well-being. Be sure to check out our previous uploads, and remember to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss any of our videos.